back to you.
Karen, thanks once again. Now let's head to Beijing, where one of the most significant political gatherings for a generation has got underway. There was an enthusiastic welcome from the National People's Congress for the proposal that President Xi could remain in post indefinitely. Let's get more on this from Robin Brandt.
Marching music and a clapping crowd. This is the annual parliament gathering in a country where one party controls everything and almost no one gets to vote. This year, though, big change is brewing because President Xi Jinping wants to stay on and on. No one inside the hall was talking about his plan to abolish term limits. These are heavily choreographed events, but outside, nothing short of joy.
为了我们国家的长治久安。
非常好，这个是体现我们国家的民主，然后我们代表全国人民的这个民意来参加选举。
That view is hardly surprising. They're loyal deputies. They'll vote on the change at the weekend. Some may disagree in private, but it's almost certain they'll fall overwhelmingly into line.
This annual event is set to last just over 2 weeks this year, a little longer than usual. So far, there's been mentions of tax reform, the internet, the military. But it's unlikely we're going to hear about the big issue, the change that could see Xi Jinping serving for, well, as long as he wants.
Before that, though, there is other important business to be done. Day one kicked off with China's economy, key to world growth.
We've set the following projected targets for development this year. GDP growth of around 6.5%, CPI increase of around 3%, over 11 million new urban jobs.
6.5% growth is the same as last year. A bigger boost in military spending was unveiled as well, announced to a crowd that represents all of this vast nation. But people like Hu Jia are not welcome in Xi Jinping's China. A long-time human rights activist, he's been sent away from his Beijing home with government minders while the politicians meet. Detaining or removing people like him has become increasingly common under this president. The prospect of an indefinite reign for Xi Jinping fills him with dread. Robin Brandt, BBC News, Beijing.
Well, let's talk now to Mary Gallagher. She's a professor of political science at the University of Michigan. Welcome here to the programme, Mary. I mean, it's pretty emperor-like, isn't it, these indefinite terms? How significant a move is it?
It's a really significant decision. I mean, I think it was expected since he took office, but at the same time, to do the change is it's shocking, I think, to many people who study China.
Shocking why, and in what way has he prepared the ground since 2012 when he came to power?
Well, so Xi Jinping, when he came to power, we expected him to be somewhat similar to the leaders who had come before him, and they had begun this process in the 1990s of adhering to the term limits for state president, serving two five-year terms, so 10 years in total. And then at the end of 10 years, stepping down, not just from the presidency, but also from General Secretary of the Communist Party and also as head of the military. That's happened more or less smoothly for the last two transitions. And of course, in 2012, 2013, Hu Jintao stepped down and made way for Xi Jinping. So for Xi Jinping to reverse this process of institutionalization of transfer of power is really important.
You also used the word shocking. Why did you use that word?
Well, I think the most important thing about what he's done is that he has removed somewhat predictable ways for other leaders below him to anticipate when he will yield. So we know now that he could serve for, he could still, step down after his next term, which we don't expect anymore with this change. He could step down after 3 terms, which would be 15 years. He could step down after 4 terms, which would be 20 years. Or he could, try to rule for his lifetime. That means that other people below him who are anticipating being able to serve in a high position, in that high position, they don't know when that position will open up. Now, for autocracies, that's dangerous.
OK, two quick questions. I mean, there's talk of the defence budget being raised by 8%. Your assessment on that? And in terms of trying to limit the influence of China, we see Japan do it, India do it, the Americans try to do it. Where do you see all of that effort, given his utter confidence in his own position?
In terms of the military budget, I mean, this is not a really significant change from previous military budgets in the sense of the increase. I mean, this has been a kind of normal large increase for the last several years. It still pales in comparison, of course, to the U.S. military budget, but it does mean that China is increasingly a competitor, particularly in terms of its naval forces. So it is a sign, I think, another big change from Xi Jinping, that China is no longer waiting. It is no longer sort of biding its time, which is what Deng Xiaoping talked about in the 1980s. It is being much more forthright in its claims to power, both domestically and internationally. In terms of what these other countries are doing in reaction to China, there is an attempt by the U.S. that really started under Obama to begin to use our allies around the region to balance against China, with Japan, with India. The United States is also creating warmer relations with Vietnam. On the other hand, China's expansion through Belt and Road and through some of its other initiatives is also extending into Africa and extending into Latin America. So you do see this increasingly dangerous possibility that there will be some sort of conflict between the United States and China, because they're impeding on each other's backyards.
Mary Gallagher, we've run out of time, but thank you very much for those thoughts. Thank you.